Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Christina Furtado, and I am the mental health and wellness specialist for Guard Me Cares. And today we continue the conversation that we started back in January on Let's Talk Day. And it was about the importance of conversation around mental health and being honest and candid about our various experiences. So today we continue that conversation to empower individuals to identify their various struggles, their challenges, but also a matter of challenging conventional ways of looking at mental health and really breaking down not only the individual stigma we might have towards sharing those personal stories, but also the social stigma that exists as a barrier to us wanting to or feeling comfortable with sharing what we are going through with other people. So today's discussion, I have the pleasure of welcoming the same exceptional panelists that joined me on Let's Talk Day. And I invite them to continue that conversation in really inspiring others through their stories, their expertise, and their powerful inspirational messages to really inspire and empower others to do the same. So I welcome, hello everyone. So we have Randy Thompson, who is from Living Works Education. So welcome, Randy.
Thank you, Christina. Thanks for having me again. It's great to be back.
Wonderful. We've got Denise Walagora from the Mental Health Commission of Canada also joining us today. So welcome, Denise.
Thank you, Christina. Great to be back with this wonderful group again today.
Yes, it's been amazing. Truly honored. And then we have Donovan McKenzie from the Heart of a Man. Welcome to join us.
Thank you, Christina. Pleasure to be back with you wonderful people.
Excellent. So let's just dive right in. So we had really shared a lot of not only our personal stories, but also our expertise from mental health fields from different aspects, not only from a personal perspective, but a professional perspective. The reality is 2020 and 2021 has really been a challenging time for many people, myself included, of having to adjust to new routines, trying to manage various emotions to experiences that I didn't even think I would have to go through. It doesn't change the fact, though, that mental health is just part of a human experience. We all have it. It's part of who we are. And yet we seem to see more forward-thinking movements and initiatives on trying to raise awareness around mental health. COVID hasn't changed the fact that we need to continue to build that awareness, that it's not just something that happened because of COVID. This is something that has been ongoing, that barriers exist. We speak to what those barriers are. We speak to the stigma. And yet here we are today needing to have this conversation. So with that said, what do we think, Donovan, what do you think is one of the main factors to the barriers of individuals accessing or reaching support?
Thank you for asking that question. That's an amazing question. There isn't a particular factor, unfortunately. There are many. Self-acceptance is big. Because if I can't acknowledge there's something wrong, I can't seek help. But before people have the ability to acknowledge something is wrong, we need the appropriate education to see the signs also too. And that was my problem in the beginning. I had a hard time seeking help because I didn't understand the signs that were happening. And I'll say, unfortunately, there is still a stigma attached to mental health in most communities, also in the Black community, as well as being a man in such communities makes the barrier even higher. And also we feel it's a sign of weakness as men. It's hard to reach out for support. For myself, that's been a big barrier. Like, you know what? I can't get the support. I'm not telling anyone. I'm going to keep this quiet. And that hurts. And that's something that I'm trying to break. That's why I always call it revolutionizing manhood. So we can open up and get the help we need. So those are some of the things for myself and some of the men I've actually worked with also too.
Well, I think you bring up a good point is that statement of it's a sign of weakness, right? And, you can go on the internet and you can Google all these positive, inspirational memes that give you the focus point of it's okay to not be okay or embrace your imperfections. It still gives an undertone that there is this sort of image that we all have to work towards or obtain in order to be well, and not really embrace the fact that we all have good or bad days. And that doesn't mean that we're broken. That doesn't mean that we're weak. It doesn't mean that we need to shy away from what that experience is. And,
Yes.
coming from a background of working with individuals that are living with addictions of various kinds, it's always this undertone belief of we need to fix the individual. No.
Yeah.
You need to fix the
Yeah.
barrier. You need to look at the structure. You need to look at the parameters. You need to look at all outside factors. And how can we better support that individual to be the best version of them, not the best version that we think they should be?
Absolutely. Wow.
Right.
Wonderful. That's inspiring. That's inspiring also too. Thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you, because it just ties into what exactly you're saying, and some of the thoughts that do go through many people's minds, not only those that are Black men or from other communities that have that type of stigma attached to mental health and talking about it. It's regardless, it's white females, it doesn't matter. It is that self-stigma that we don't want to be any less than what someone else thinks we are. And part of that is just our perception of what mental health is. And it does tie in as well, like with some of the access to supports. Randy, what do you think with regards to that and the factors that can contribute to support access?
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. To be honest, the stigma is still there, and that I think will be an ongoing challenge. I think we'll be talking about this for years to come. So breaking down those barriers, I think at a personal level is important. Understanding what really drives you in terms of your mental health, what sustains you as an individual, that like no one else, that can support better mental health for you. I think it starts there as we kind of weave the discussion towards organizations and what they can do, and we'll get into that. But what I've learned over the past year, and today, as we're sharing Real Talk, is a very significant date for me, as it's the 1-year anniversary of my stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And I think about where I was back in March 25th of 2020, where I am today, and as challenging and as difficult physically and mentally as it's been this past year, along with COVID, without it, it would not have allowed me to really dedicate myself to introspect around what really was important to me, like what really mattered and what really didn't, what sustained me in life. And it really forced me to think about what was really important and to reach out to individuals that I felt were important and that were good for me, and to purge out the things that I couldn't control, that pissed me off, that just didn't make me happy. And I've continued that throughout the year. And what it's done, it's created opportunities for me to bring hope to others as I share this story. And that in turn brings more hope and inspiration to me.
Yeah. So
there's nothing wrong with sitting down and doing a bit of an inventory in terms of what is really important to you, what sustains you in life. We talk a lot about that in suicide prevention, because that's really important in terms of staying alive, and people staying alive is finding what's important to them, what sustains them. It is no different in mental health. So to me, it's got to start with the individual before we can expect others and organizations to want to support us. I think we really need to understand what drives us.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, we'll talk a lot about what individuals can do to sort of shift their own self-stigma around that. But I think it's also a matter of looking at how we educate individuals on mental health, mental well-being. We are, a country that invites so many different backgrounds, so many different experiences, belief systems, but yet we haven't tailored how we present mental health to be more inclusive to those various perspectives. When we look at mental health, it's about how our minds are, our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors. That is the prime ingredients of what makes us human. And when those are not working at their best, energetic or positive self, then that's where we need to question. what supports do I need? And it's not about these magic boxes or these frameworks that we have to fall within that equates to support, but identifying that there's so many different layers, so many different avenues of support that someone can actually access. And we just don't have, I think, a very strong infrastructure in place to actually educate people on what that looks like. Denise, what do you think about that with regards to accessibility or relevant supports, that particular aspect of barrier?
Christine, there's so much to say about this, right? Like, I think we need like a whole day. But, to me, it comes back just to build upon what Donovan and Randy said, when we talk about mental well-being, right? So what helps my mental well-being isn't necessarily what helps Randy, Donovan, or yourself, right? So it starts with us, but then it goes to who are the people reaching out to? And you could have 20 great care providers, or I'll just say 20 care providers, but if they don't have an understanding of mental health, if the doctor that you're reaching out to or doesn't have a good understanding and says, oh, it's just you're going through this and that's why you're not sleeping well, it really starts with educating the people in healthcare and having them have a better understanding that when people are presenting with certain issues, that they're not clumping them all in as one. Like we talk about individuals that struggle with substance use, right? Not everybody has the same reasons for struggling. We really have to make it work. It's not a blanket. It's not the Band-Aid. It's not that everybody fits in one model. We have to fit the needs of that individual person. And that's where I think we're missing a lot of it, is that they're like, well, this group is good for you. Well, maybe not necessarily this group isn't good for me. That's not what I'm struggling with right now. So it's that the professionals need to meet the needs of the person. And it starts with education. We said that people have a misunderstanding about mental health. People have a misunderstanding of individuals that live with mental health problems. But we know it starts with us also recognizing that we're not in a good place. And it starts with doing self check-ins, and it starts with, being able to say, hey, how am I doing? How long have I been feeling this way? Right. And then who is it that we can trust? But it's the barriers are, we think about in rural areas, let's think about accessibility. Right? Like people have this idea that, oh, well, I heard from, a couple months ago, oh, I live rural. I mean, where do you live? Well, I live Sarnia. That's not rural. Go into the territories where they don't have a psychiatrist, or they have case managers that fly into community once every 3 months. So the accessibility is, to me, one of the biggest barriers, that we're not meeting the needs of all Canadians.
Yeah.
And I'll stop there because I'll get carried away. So,
but it sort of segues into everything else that we've been saying. It's again, the support isn't about, A plus B equals C type of model. It's really looking at the individual. What is their background? What is their perception around mental health? What do they know? What don't they know about the supports? But more importantly is, what do they need?
yes.
Not what I think they need.
Exactly. Like if you think about, as you said, we are such a melting pot in Canada. We are so fortunate to have so many different cultures around us that we can learn so much. But we think about individuals that come from other countries, that in some cultures, there's not even specific language for mental health problems. And so we need to realize that when we're talking to individuals, we focus on what are they experiencing, not labels. Like we have to throw the labels away. What are the changes? What are those experiences that people are going through, and what's the effect that it's had on them? Right. So yeah, that's that one of those things.
So, well, Donovan, Denise has sort of just laid the foundation for you in the sense of, individuals, right?
Yes.
And sort of what can individuals do in their own practices for their own mental well-being, or even to be a support system, or that, the other day I heard an analogy about dominoes, right? And if we think about dominoes, the game, each domino stands on its own independently, but within close proximity to another domino. And it always takes that first domino to fall down and knock every single other domino down without them having a choice. So I look at individuals being that first domino. So
Yes.
what do you think individuals can do, or what have you done? Because I know Heart of a Man is doing some amazing work in advocating for Black men to speak up and speak out with regards to their challenges of mental health, and not shying away from that. So I don't want to, steal your platform, but I'd love to hear more about what you think can be done from an individual level to tear down some of these barriers and really inspire people to share their stories.
You know what? I could go on for an hour about this.
I
I've
know
been
you
talking
can.
about this for the last year, especially. It's just been nonstop. But I've been talking about society. Like I was talking to my friend that society can bring normalcy to the conversation surrounding mental health by making a part of the conversation without being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I want to make it. I'm going to make talking about mental weather also like normal, like we're talking about the weather, right? As an individual, it's been very hard for me to talk about things openly, but I had to read books and learn, and we have to also take responsibility for those of us who are older. I think it's important for us to educate ourselves, research and learn as much as you can, whether mental health affects us or not. And my mother, my father, my culture did not want to do that very often. I was rejected a lot, but as an individual, I had to gain the knowledge, because knowledge is power, no matter the topic. I had to gain the knowledge as an individual on mental health. I had to accept it. I had to cry. I had to just say, you know what? Enough is enough. I don't care what you think about me. I'm going to go out there as a Black man and I'm going to learn about this so I could teach myself and teach for others. And that's why I say to other men too, we need to be an advocate. If not for ourselves, for other people who are struggling, and equipping ourselves with the right information, that will help us be the advocate. And that's the thing as an individual too. When we learn that stuff too, we can be an advocate instead of making it such an uncomfortable conversation, because it's been so uncomfortable for me to talk about this stuff until I decided, you know what, I'm going to make it be like talking about the weather. Mm-hmm. And it's been hard, but I'm getting through it and reading these books and just talking to you guys. This is what's bringing me up and making me grow as a man and understand about mental health and, getting the knowledge behind it even more and more.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's again where it does start. It's about education, and it's not only about education with regards to the field of mental health and the idea of mental health, but it's education about getting to know yourself, right? And being able to become comfortable with what's uncomfortable and gaining the skill set to do that, and that it's skills are learned, they're
So
not inherited.
Can I jump in for a quick second?
Of course.
I'm now the age of 38. I look like I'm 21, I know, but I'm 38. The skill set, like you just said, it took me years to learn the skill set, like you said. Like, yes, knowledge is good, but I had to really learn the skills. Like even this morning, I woke up, my heart felt heavy. I felt so overwhelmed. There's so much going on in my mind, but I learned the skill set, how to cope with that, how to deal with it, right? Not how to just say and think all these negative things, but just say, you know what? I feel like this. This is maybe because of my depression, because of my anxiety, because of my past, but I know certain things to make me feel better. So now I'm with you guys talking, right? I mean, if this was like way back in the days, I'd cancel this. I wouldn't be here talking right now. I want to keep my mouth shut, walk around angry, but that's enough. Enough is enough, right? Yeah. So that as individuals, we need to learn the skills also too. And it takes a long time, but I'm here, right? And I want other men to join me too.
Well, I hope that they do. And again, if we can just even plant a seed today in giving someone else the inspiration and empowerment to speak what their truth is in the moment, whether it be something positive or something negative that's going on, both are of equal value to their experience, right? That's and right. we also need to shift that perspective a little bit around mental health, in that it's not always a bad thing to go through, because there's always going to be those opportunities to learn. and it's learning about what you need, or learning about your own skill sets or your own strengths or your own weaknesses, and what it is you can do better or do differently. But it's about shifting it, that it's not a bad thing. It's a matter of what can you take from it, learn from it, and move forward from. But again, there's so much more beyond what individuals can do, because as individuals, we are not just solo entities. We are those dominoes. We do have that impact on those around us. So it's important that we sort of take the next step forward and say, okay, well, what do these, larger entities that we are members of, what are their responsibilities? What can we hold them to be accountable towards shifting the stigma, breaking down those barriers? So Randy, from, workplace or organizations, those are very significant entities that have very specific ways of doing things, and supports available to their employees, or just even their own involvement in various initiatives. What do you think organizations can do?
Yeah, absolutely. And what a great segue from our most recent conversation here in terms of educating. And I know Denise talked about educating the workplace in terms of mental health and what that means. But to me, it's even more basic than that. It's really educating the organization, educating itself on what their people are saying and what they're going through. And understand, and having these types of discussions is not a terrible thing. Engage your people, engage your staff in terms of what's driving them, because it is so different for every organization. Smaller organizations that are far more impacted by mental health issues than larger, we know that.
Yeah.
We have organizations with various cultures, which has its own vocabulary around mental health, suicide prevention. We need to understand that. And I think, Donovan, you're kind of touching on that. We need to know these differences and understand them and appreciate them, so that if we have a better grasp on what is driving our people in terms of mental health, then we are in a far better position to decide what supports and what resources that are out there, because I don't want my people to be counselors unless that's what we do. Other than that, I want to make sure we're reaching out to the right resources, and we're spending our money and our time wisely, and that they're actually going to have a positive impact on those that actually get out there and ask for help. Yeah. That ties, Denise, into your comment, which is very, very real, around accessibility. And what I love to see in it now more and more is more of that kind of telehealth support that seems to be growing, which I think is a great thing. It's allowing those that are tough to reach to access supports. I've been in communities, Denise, where, like you said, doc comes in once every 2-3 months, dentist comes in twice a year. Like it's just not, the support just isn't there. So we have to figure out ways to find people to get access to that type of support. And a lot of that is educating them as well. It's great to have a wellness plan, and it's great to have a wellness program, but if people don't know how to access, man, that's just wrong, right? So there's a lot of education that needs to go in there. You don't need to be a professional in mental health. You just need to understand what your people are going through, what is driving it, and treat mental health in the same way you would treat a physical health condition. 100%. A broken arm is no different than a broken heart.
Oh,
so listen to people, engage them, right? Yeah. To me, it's as basic as that, Christina, and it's different for every organization. So to me, it's finding a champion and identifying a champion within that organization who will follow through on that mandate.
Yeah.
Because that is super important, and walk the walk. They see that those above them and their leadership supports mental health, and that's going to break down tons of barriers, and it's going to open people up to be able to have these conversations and get the help they need.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. And I think that, part of what organizations, a stepping stone to help sort of steer the ship a little bit in directions of being more inclusive of support, being more understanding. We've talked a lot about language that is used around mental health, and trying to take that step back from those clinical terms or those overarching umbrellas, of mental health, mental illness, and all of that terms that can be totally misleading to that person that doesn't know what that word means, except for I'm crazy. we need to sort of take a step back, but we also need to appreciate that a lot of what organizations are doing and their perceptions and their steps towards supporting their staff is a privilege. Mental health is a privilege. Support is a privilege.
Absolutely.
And if we start looking at it as such and really trying to take a step back of going, how can I use that to better support those that do not have the same privilege?
Yes.
You know, it is about that advocation. It is about that awareness. You know, Donovan, you mentioned earlier at the very beginning, you cannot change what you don't acknowledge. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the idea is still the same for organizations. If you don't know what is going on, if you don't know what your team needs, then you are not going to have a solid, efficient team.
Yeah.
It's not just about checklists and check boxes. You need to have a well team to be a well-oiled machine, you know, for that analogy of like, that's what you want. Now, again, it's not just about individuals. It's not about organizations. We, as entire communities, need to really step up and do our part.
Sorry, I didn't mean to trump you there. I was just going to finish on that and talk about how organizations they're just one element. And when we talk a lot about suicide prevention and our ability to kind of move the needle, it must be in a community-based approach.
Yeah.
I think it's important that people can get that support where they live, work, play, where they pray, where they socialize. This really needs to be a concerted effort across various communities in the health system to help make a difference. I'll end on that.
I couldn't agree more. And again, it boils down to, we are the first domino in a long line of dominoes to come. So Denise, society as a whole, communities as a whole, again, huge thing to ask for.
Yeah.
5 minutes, Denise.
You know what?
But at the same time, you know, there needs to be shifts there as well.
100%.
So what do you think, you know, from that perspective, can be done to help break down these barriers?
So there's going to be two things. And number one is something that people can sign up to do that they can do today, which is to take a mental health first aid course, which provides those participants with a better understanding of changes or signs and somebody's experiencing that decline in their mental well-being, and how to be that support, how to create a safe space and and have a conversation, and creating that safe space that allows that person to talk about what they're experiencing. And then through asking questions, checking understanding, talk about resources and encouraging that person. That's one thing. So that's where the education piece comes in at, right? Sign up for a mental health first aid course. We're offering virtual courses. But what we can all do, everybody that's listening today, everybody that's going to watch us from this point forward, the one thing we all have the ability to do is our language. And so when we talk about respectful language, and we know the effect that stigmatizing language has on individuals that live with mental health problems. And that starts with us. We have the control on the words that we use. So we don't say somebody's a schizophrenic. No, we do not identify somebody by their mental health problem. They are a person that lives with schizophrenia. So we have to, they're not a druggie. No, they're not a druggie. They struggle with substance use. Right? Nobody wakes up one day and says, oh, I think I'm going to try heroin today. Right? Nobody does that. There's things that happen in a person's life. So for me, we know that language, and us always being mindful, because here's the thing, Christina, if I was struggling with my mental well-being and I heard my colleagues saying really negative things or using really stigmatizing language, I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about my mental well-being and what's happening with me.
I was going to actually interject and say it's even in how we carry our day-to-day personal conversations.
Absolutely.
You never know who is listening.
Exactly.
You never know. So even if you're making a flippant comment, or you're joking, or you're posting a meme, on your social media that has this certain undertone of this language that we're trying to avoid, that is a snapshot for someone else to say, are you my person or not?
Exactly. Exactly. And our ability to use respectful language, is what allows us to build trust with individuals. And so it really does start with us, that we're not going to be saying, oh, yeah, they're just crazy, or, or, oh, they just need to calm down. Somebody who's very anxious saying, oh, they just need to calm down. No, somebody's having a panic attack. I will tell you that does not work. And if you ask any woman, if anybody ever told them to calm down, we know that doesn't work either, right? So, we just don't use that kind of, but it starts with us. Like on Mental Health First Aid's website, if you go to resources, we have a safer language guide. And so I encourage people to go on our website, print it out, put it in your workplaces, put it out for people to see, right? And if you hear people using stigmatizing language, feel comfortable and about reframing and saying, hey, that's going to stop people. It's about education, and it's about reframing that. So
exactly. And it's not about intentions, right? And this is where I think we need to also be mindful in educating those that are watching us now, or those that will be watching us after, is that it's not about the intention that you have, but the impact that you have that matters the most. Because we can go into a conversation, we can go into an interaction having certain intentions of, oh, I didn't mean to say that. Well, the fact is you said it and it had this impact on me.
And so that impact is what leads to self-stigma. And self-stigma is what stops people from reaching out for support. So don't be that person. Don't be that person that adds to that stigma.
Be the domino to change.
That's right.
And that also builds a culture too, Denise.
Exactly.
We talk about organizations. It's that type of language that when it's acceptable and it's not called out, that's how cultures are built.
Exactly.
So great point by you.
Yeah.
Denise, can I add to that really quickly?
Please.
What happened was, in my life, I used to make fun of people with mental health issues growing up because I didn't have the knowledge, right? I didn't have the education. So I'd make jokes, funny jokes, not knowing how much it's hurting them, right? And it was like, I got hit hard when I was diagnosed with like depression. I was like, whoa, all those years I was saying these things, making these little funny comments and making fun of people, thinking they're crazy. But when you feel it, it's like your mind just shifts. You get this paradigm shift, like, oh my God, I know how you feel now. Tears, crying. Man, I cried a lot of tears, and I had to feel it too. I mean, I want my community and people to know, like, those words are so powerful too. We have to get educated, and we got to be careful what we say.
And I think it's also about extending some grace, because the reality is, you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know.
What you don't know.
And a lot of what we're hoping to achieve together is building that awareness, promoting the education, and getting individuals comfortable with either acknowledging patterns of behavior or habits in the background that they've done to then change that behavior moving forward, or build the awareness and inspire others to share their stories of challenges. The idea is about education. It's not about hand slapping. It's not about judgment for past behaviors or past actions, because we only know what we know. And today is the day to commit to making the change moving forward, to dive back into your Rolodex of memories and go, I could have done differently. So today I'm going to do differently. And tomorrow I'm going to be even better. And that's something that we need to extend ourselves some grace, but we also need to extend others some grace as well. And be part of their education, be part of their journey to be that better version of themselves, whether it's them struggling with mental health issues or their lack of sensitivity towards individuals that are struggling with mental health issues. We all have a role to play. It's not a big role by any means. It's not a huge ask by any means. It is about planting the seed and being part of the change, you know? And I think that, you know, we find ourselves, especially right now, we covered so much, and I'm so grateful for all of the time that you guys have dedicated to this. What I'd love to do is see if there's any questions that some of our participants may have for any one of the panelists that we have. So why don't we give some individuals a chance to pose some questions, and then we'll see what comes out before we wrap things up. We do have some feedback, though, that, there's definitely been some participants that have agreed completely with language and respectful language being very important, and a critical tipping point to overcoming some of those barriers, or at least chipping away at it.
Yep.
I think that's also something we need to be mindful of, is that it wasn't a flip of the switch that we find ourselves here talking about barriers of mental health or overcoming the stigma around mental health. This is something that has been ongoing and has been here well before my time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What I'm hoping is that as conversations continue, that the younger generation don't have as much to overcome that the older generation or myself have.
Well, I think the younger generation are, they're big advocates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think about, the younger generation today compared to you know, like Donovan. I'm not 38, but I'll say that I look 21. So, but
You do.
it's thanks, buddy. But it's that I see the young people today, and they are advocates, and they take on when things are happening. They're speaking up, and they have the voice, and we just need the grown-ups to listen a bit more to some of
And
them.
and we're seeing that in organizations too, when we talk about hiring practices and interviews and what people are looking for. And what we are hearing from the younger generation is, money is money, and we will land on a salary. But I'm very concerned. I'm very curious as to how these organizations are going to support me and my family. That to me is what's important. We talk about benefits and that kind of thing, but there's a real focus there on mental health. And are people, and is this an organization that is good for me mentally to be working in? Is this going to be good for my family as I grow up and start building a family? We get questions all the time from interviewees around that, as opposed to what is my compensation. So great point.
Yeah. And it actually is a great segue into a question that we do have. Now, Donovan, we sort of in our conversations, you alluded to the skills, right? Of get up, move on. How do you think, or this is addressed to you first, and then the other panelists, please pipe in. How can one develop those skills? Like what the process? How can they get started to develop the skill set of building that awareness, of knowing what supports you need, or just even having any skills really to help support mental health?
Well, the first thing I had to do, everyone here is just knowing is half the battle, right?
Yeah.
Everyone here is just, but I had to really reach out to my family, my mother, right? And my father. And they weren't as supportive, but I was able to open up. And once I did that, I had the courage to say, okay, eventually now I'm going to actually go to my doctor and say, listen, I need to see a therapist, because here are some of the things that's happening. I can't sleep. I feel down. I'm always staying in the dark. I'm always having all these negative thoughts. So I had to have the courage to do that. And then when I did that and I started seeing a psychiatrist, I started seeing a psychologist, psychotherapist, I was able to gain so much knowledge and understand so much about myself and the things I was struggling with. And I gained the skills to cope with it, to deal with it. And that's what led me to know, like, you know what, I'm not alone. Wow, so many people are facing this. It opened my heart to want to learn and to help other people going through that battle. But those are the things I had to do. To this day, I still see a therapist. I could tell the world that, because I need to see a therapist because of what I deal with inside sometimes. But those are the things we have to do. We have to know, we have to go and ask for help. We have to reach out to a therapist, and we have to be open. And sometimes you might not connect with that therapist, but don't give up. See another therapist and try to find another therapist you can connect with, because there are a lot of therapists out there that care, that want to help you.
Yeah. I think it also is the same idea of just even reaching out to support. So while you had the comfortability and the awareness to go to family to share your experiences, that is not always the case.
No.
And again, there could be that expectation as well, that depending what someone does for a living, for example, is that they are even equipped to deal with more of a personal dynamic of someone struggling in their sphere, in their close parameters of family, and that can be difficult. It's about finding the support system that you need that will help
Yes.
guide you to develop a skill set that you require, right? To better manage some of those challenging times. And sometimes those challenges are ongoing. And that's where support needs to be ongoing. Denise, what else do you think might be a means of one developing a skill set?
Well, I know this is, repeating upon what Donovan said, but I honestly can't stress it enough. It starts with us. It starts. And when I went through my depression, I had zero insight into the fact that I was struggling, and I didn't talk to anybody. And that was the biggest thing that I took away from those months of 2010. The October and December were really the three worst months of my life mentally. And I struggled with thoughts of suicide. I didn't talk to anybody about that. And, it wasn't after the fact that I talked to one of my friends, and she's like, "Why didn't you reach out?" I'm like, "Because I didn't, and was it self-stigma?" And even though I work in the field, I teach about it, I struggled with that, right? Is that I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be able to do that. But I would have never have talked to any of my friends and the people that I love. I would have never talked to them that way. And I think that's the other thing, is that we need to talk to ourselves and provide ourselves with the same support and love that we talk to those in our life that we love. Because if I would have had that conversation with myself, I would have reached out for support much sooner than what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is, do a self check-in and give yourself permission to say, it's okay that I feel this way, but I deserve to feel better. Who can I reach out to? Right.
Yeah.
So that's what it is to me. It's that, don't suffer alone. Don't struggle alone. There are people out there. There are organizations out there, whether you call a distress center, whether you reach out to the kids' help phone, whether you call a crisis line, whatever it is, there is somebody out there that will listen to you. So
Yeah.
do
Absolutely.
not struggle alone. You don't have to.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest, like, it has to start there. And then once it starts from there,
Mm-hmm.
things will also just kind of fall into place when you get those right supports, but it has to start with that acknowledgement.
Yeah. Randy, how about you? What do you think?
Oh man, yeah, you guys really you hit the nail on the head for me, and Donovan, you started it. The biggest challenge there is yourself, and I think that's what prevents a lot of people from getting help, is they won't admit that there's a problem. We talk about that in addictions. We talk about that suicide prevention. You have to admit to yourself that, yes, I'm not well, and it is overwhelming me. And at that point, you start thinking about, so who can I reach out to? And to your point, Donovan, you might not reach out to the right person. Don't stop there. This is not easy. We get that.
Yeah.
So don't stop there. That's what makes this whole community-based approach so important, because you may not find it with your mom or dad, but you might find it in your church. You might find it where you play. You might find it, at a friend's house. You might find it on social media of all places. Like, find the way, find what sustains you, and don't be afraid to reach out. But it's got to start with you. You're absolutely right.
I think that there's one thing that we do need to sort of highlight in the starting point of individuals doing those check-ins, and those individuals starting with themselves, is we have become so accustomed to an autopilot type of way of living that we may not even know, those initial stages of struggle. And that's where I think it really needs to happen, is that self-awareness of, how do you feel on your good days, and pay attention to that. What does your body say? What are the thoughts that you have? What are the conversations that you have with yourself? Because the one thing that we do very well is, when our bodies aren't feeling the best, we know how that feels, and we know exactly where we need to go for help. Whereas when it comes to how we are struggling with regards to our own mental well-being, we don't always know what those earlier signs are of that struggle that we are going through, because we are so focused on what's going on today for work, what's going on today for family, what do I have to get done, what do I do, that we just sort of push things aside until it gets to the point where it is just so much for us to handle. We need to take the step back, and we need to slow down.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, I mentioned in the beginning with regards to mental health is about how our minds are, our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. Well, automatic pilot is you have those thoughts, they create the feelings, and then you act on it, you react. No, we need to take a step back, pause, and then choose to decide how to respond. And it's in that response that you can say, okay, wait a second, I don't know what to do here. And when you don't know what to do, and that's what you're saying to yourself, that is your course of action to find someone that can give you the guidance and give you the tools to help know what to do, at least in that moment. And that goes into a question that we have with regards to, how do we assess mental health needs of our team? So within an organizational setting, that obviously can be quite tricky, as you aren't necessarily with your team on a daily basis, or you don't have a certain relationship to where, let's be honest, speaking about mental health is a very intimate and private conversation. And while, Donovan's point of normalizing that conversation is what we want to work towards, it's not where we're at right now. So we need to look at, providing a foundation and providing awareness where we are right now.
Yeah.
So, Randy, what do you think someone can do, regardless of what level of management they're at, whether, doesn't really matter because we're all part of the same team. How can we assess our teammates' mental well-being?
Yeah, great question, and can underscore the importance of the impact of how people are managed. So I'm all about manager training and getting them the education and the supports that they need to be better managers, particularly around mental health. And many organizations have like an EAP, or they have some type of management training available to them. So I highly recommend that they take advantage of that, because that helps arm the manager and helps build confidence with their ability to have some not always really comfortable conversations, but they don't have to be uncomfortable. A simple check-in on how people are doing without even talking about mental health is a great way to get people to maybe open up about how they're feeling. And doing at both an individual and a group level is super important. Engage your individuals, let them show that you're there for their support, you're not there to judge, and it doesn't have to be a difficult conversation, just to check in, say, how you doing, how are things, how are things at home, how can we do, what can we do to help it make the workplace better for you, or really engage and most importantly follow through on these conversations. Don't just end it there. Have a follow-up so that the employee feels heard, they feel supported, they feel that this is a safe environment. And then if you can come together as a team, and maybe it doesn't have to be every week, could be once a month, every couple of months, you'll figure out what that cadence should look like. But engage them in that in those conversations and take action. And maybe you don't for whatever reason. Let them know why. But man, oh man, I find the best organizations, and you read about it, are those that elicit the opinions of their staff, take an inventory of what that is, and then come up with a plan. And it doesn't have to be hard.
I think it actually is the same that you would do for an individual, regardless of it being part of an organization or team. We all have interactions with others, some on a daily basis, some less frequently, but we get to know how someone else is, and we get to know how we are, how we show up, how we don't show up, and sort of trying to figure out all those elements as to what might impact our ability to be the best version of us on that day. But we always have the awareness, even though we may not listen to it, but we always have that awareness of something's off. Something seems different. Something just doesn't seem like Donovan. I don't know, something's different about Randy. Something just doesn't seem right about Denise. There's always going to be that gut reaction, that intuition that we have, that we ignore initially because we don't want to pry. Pry.
You never go wrong by checking in with somebody.
No. And
what do you have to lose?
And that's that's the definition I think I want to get to with regards to what checking in actually means. It is acknowledging and making that individual aware that you've noticed a change, not pushing them to have any response, but let them know that you're there in case of.
Yep.
So
Wonderful.
I just noticed, I'm concerned, you know, not gonna, and you can even be as honest and saying, I don't want to pry, but I'm here if you need someone to talk to. When you are honest and genuine, it comes across. And I really strongly believe that, because one, we achieved it during our real talks, you know, of having the honest conversation around mental health. It is more received because we're saying it in a way that can be understood, that someone in the room, that someone, you know, that you're working with, or that you are part of a church with, or a support group or a sports team, it's showing that you are a person that is safe, understanding, and non-judgmental, regardless of what they're going through. And maybe you're not the person to offer this support because of your own skill set or where you are at within your life, but you can be the teammate to bridge the gap.
Yes.
Right? And connect them with a support that will be relevant, that will be accessible, and that will make the difference for them. And even if it is just conversation, that's support.
It is.
It's giving people an opportunity to share.
That's beautiful, Christina. Empathy, compassion. I'm telling you right now, it can save a life sometimes. I know that for a
100%.
fact. I have a lot of stories. I can't share it now, but it could save a life. Definitely.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
And
My
we do
absolute
talk a lot
pleasure.
about that in suicide prevention, and that is there is a role for everyone, regardless of what that is. If you're interested in supporting people, there is a role for you, and there's training available, of course. But you don't have to be the savior.
Nope.
You can be someone who links somebody who can provide interventions for you, can support you in a different way. But you can be that link, that domino, that effect that we keep talking about now, Christina. Thank you for that. To play a role in someone's life and help lead them to that level of support that they need.
Yeah. It's again shifting the perspective. We're not here to fix an individual. We're here to fix the barrier. We're not here to fix the problem. We're here to fix the barrier. And that is the foundation of change to come. It's about perspective. It's about language. It's about vulnerability, and it's about getting comfortable with what's uncomfortable. And the more that you become comfortable with what's uncomfortable, guess what? It becomes normalized. It becomes part of who you are. And ultimately, as Jonathan mentioned, that's what we want to achieve, right? The normalcy around sharing one's stories, sharing what's uncomfortable, sharing what you're feeling without any fear of self-judgment or external judgment. That's what we want to achieve. But
Christina, I honestly, when we check in with somebody and say I've noticed, I really believe one of the best gifts that we can give anybody is our time. And
can't hear you.
The computer muted me. I think one of the best things that we can give is our ability to listen, because sometimes when people are just having a really bad day or bad days in a row, and they're walking around with all this shit in their heads, and we all know what that feels like. And then somebody comes along and says, "Hey, Christine, I've noticed lately, bam, bam, bam." And we've set that safe space, and all what you need from me at that moment is to listen. I've given you one of the best gifts that I can give you. And I think that that's it. And we all have the ability to do that, is to be that listener. And you don't need 20 degrees. You don't have to have your doctorate. You don't need all these initials after your last name.
No.
To be an effective listener.
And it really, again, is about, taking on some accountability, if you will, and how you carry yourself to be that person, or potential to be that person. You mentioned about time and being available for someone. There is that saying that we've always heard, oh, time is money. Well, what does that actually say? No, time can save a life.
Exactly.
So again, let's shift the perspective.
Absolutely.
And it starts from each individual, as we've all expressed. It filters into organizations as a whole, and then trickles into society as overall communities. It can happen. It will happen. We just have to be part of that happening.
Yes.
And, I unfortunately, we do have to wrap things up because of where we're at. And I agree, we could talk about it for hours. I want to do a special thank you for each and every single one of you for joining me again for today's panelist. I absolutely appreciate each and every single one of you, your stories, your inspiration. I am continuously inspired and motivated by each of you in every single way. I walk away going, yeah, this was great. And I learned this. Oh, I like how Donovan said that. Oh, Randy, like that little smart little guy over there. He's got some great tips. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this and really being a part of the Real Talk in its earlier days. I'm excited that it's Real Talk is going to be something that we are going to continue on a monthly basis, inviting different panelists to join us on various topics. Our next one is actually May 6th, which is going to be talking about child and mental health and youth specifically. So it's so important, especially now more than ever, given what they've had to overcome at such a young age with regards to COVID and a whole bunch of other stuff that we're not going to get into. So I'm truly thrilled, actually, for who we will be inviting on that day. And I really hope that we see everybody join us on May 6th. But for now, thank you to my wonderful panelists, and thank you to everyone that joined us today. And be safe, stay positive, and reach out for support if you need it. You're not alone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.